Your questions are my questions. So I ask you, why can't my answers be yours? You out there have asked me for 4 years, 5 years since I started these videos, how can I be a believer when evolution clearly indicates that things evolved by themselves? How can you be a believer and believe in circumcision when it mutilates a child? When you violate the rights of a child to his own body? How can you believe in a Torah that distinguishes between men and women? How can you believe in a Torah that declares you to be a chosen people? How can you believe in a book that hasn't been substantiated by archaeology? And how can you believe in a calendar that seems to be outdated by the archaeological and scientific evidence? And you think that you know these questions and you've made the proper conclusion. But these dumb, stupid rabbis, these ignoramus, who've never stepped foot into a university, they know nothing. Well, let me tell you that it isn't true. That every discovery and every argument has been posed to different people. Different people make different conclusions about them. But one thing is certain: your questions have answers. It's just that maybe you don't want to hear the answers. You're just interested in the question. If you truly were interested in an answer, would you be willing to change your life as a result of the answer? And if the answer is no, then you really don't have a question, you have an excuse. A question should never be an excuse. A question should bring you closer to the truth. And the question is, what is the truth, the ultimate truth? One thing that we know for sure is that there was a creation. Torah describes a creation from nothing. Scientists, I mean real scientists, up until the 60s, refused to believe that there was a creation. They believed that there was an ongoing existence. That's what they wanted to believe. Because a creation would imply a creator. And that's inconvenient. And despite the fact that Einstein wanted to get the wisdom of the old man, he never wanted to have an old man telling him what he was supposed to do. Einstein just did whatever he wanted. He was a horrible father, probably just as bad as a husband. And just because you're a scientist doesn't mean you're moral or that you've got ethics. You're a scientist because you know how to experiment and you have an understanding of certain theories. And hopefully you're good at it. But with the advent of the Hubble telescope, with Hubble seeing the expanding universe, with the advent of the discovery of certain radiation that is expanded and found within the universe, we all know that things had to start from a certain point. Now, why doesn't that bring you atheists to the belief in a supreme being? And the answer is because the scientists who have accepted it begrudgingly, but accepted it nonetheless, have all tried to find another way out. How can we go ahead and find a way out? And so they've come up with all interesting types of ways to explain beginnings so that we wouldn't have to burden ourselves with a beginner. But all they've done is pushed the question or the query just back a little bit. If you believe in a multiverse universe, which we are not aware of, it's outside of us, how did that start? And when did that start? And you can't tell me always was, because something that always was doesn't change. And we've gone through that already. And Hawking's attempt at explaining non-changes is sophomoric. Hawking's a great physicist, wonderful mathematician, a very poor philosopher. Things that existed infinitely don't change. And if they change, they're not infinite. So you ask, how could that be with God who's infinite? And the answer is, God is not a thing. God is not a particle. God is not a set of laws or rules. God isn't even infinite. God has no definition. And what has no definition has no beginning or end, and can create all definitions and all beginnings and all ends. God is the most interesting thing there is. Just that we are only beginning to appreciate God's wisdom and have a sense of God's infinity. Looking at the universe, looking at the world, looking at all the theories behind this only increases our wonder at the one that put it together. Because at the end of the day, you have to conclude that somebody put this together. I don't care what device you're using. Now, there are those who wanted to postulate that evolution started by aliens seeding us in this world. Well, how'd the aliens get there? And how'd they get their seeds? You just started the question a little bit further back, but you haven't changed the process. Ultimately, you must conclude that there's a starter. And if there's a starter, then there's a purpose. Then he wants something from you, from this world. And you have to look for it. Well, how do you know it's the Torah? The answer is, there isn't anything else that can approach the Torah. The Torah has been examined for thousands of years, studied. Every nuance, every detail has significance and meaning. Now, I grant you that there are things that were stated and based upon the science of the day. Understand that the Torah is not a science book or a history book. It is a book of revelation, of prophetic principle. Whatever you can understand on your own, whatever man can reach on his own, God does not have to give it to us. So therefore, the Torah will not tell you what the scientists are going to say. Only afterwards can we examine and find that these teachings already existed within the teachings of the Torah. But you're not going to find particle physics, quantum mechanics, in the Torah explicitly stated, or relativity, or any other branch, true branch of science. Because that's not what the Torah is about. But the Torah has been given more examination than any other book. And it's time for the scientists. Put away your biases and examine this holy book. Your questions are my questions. Are you ready, however, for my answers? It's time.